Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my LinkedIn Lives. I'm Jasmine Navarro, certified wellbeing expert. And as you know, every week I interview different experts who make a difference. And today I'm super excited to be interviewing Barry. Barry, could you please tell us about yourself and what you do?
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Jasmine. Thanks very much for having me on today. My name is Barry Lee Cummings, and I'm the Chief Awareness Officer for an initiative called Beat the Cyberbully. And Beat the Cyberbully is an awareness and education initiative to help children, young people, parents, and anyone that has access to the internet really and social media to understand a bit more about the pitfalls of what's going on, understand how to use the tools more safely and to protect themselves, because unfortunately there's a lot of scenarios happening online where young people especially are getting themselves into trouble on social media, on gaming platforms, on all sorts. And in some cases, mum and dad are a little bit lost as to what to do because we didn't grow up with this stuff. And so our initiative is going into schools and also through digital platforms as well to try and share knowledge really all around the digital space, the digital environment. As I said, more around the pitfalls for parents to be aware of, because sometimes we find that because they're not really cognizant of what could happen to their children, they happily hand out iPads and iPhones at a young age. And unfortunately, we're seeing some pretty unfortunate situations and in some cases, some really tragic situations unfolding in that digital space.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for that. And yes, your work is super important. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to finding out more about the challenges that you've solved and things like that. I think you've answered this question. The title you chose today, Empowering Families to Protect Themselves in the Digital World Through Education, which, yeah, seems really important. And like you said, affects everybody who's online, which I think is nearly everybody. Can you tell us, you did actually mention why you chose that topic. Is there anything else you want to add about what made you choose this topic today?
Well, it's something that has become very close to my heart, in that Beat the Cyberbully started back in 2014. My history, if you like, before that, and still now, I run a digital marketing agency. And I would go into these scenarios with general managers and marketing directors, and we'd spend 5 minutes talking about how we can leverage the digital channels for their business. And as soon as we started to get the technicalities, they would say, well, if that's how YouTube works, does that mean that my 8-year-old would see? And then be like, yes. And we'd spend the rest of the meeting talking about their kids and the problems of trying to manage that. And so in 2014, we realized that there was this big issue with access and a lack of understanding. And it became really, really obvious. And I've got a business partner in the UK who I think you've actually chatted to before, Wayne Denner.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I have.
Yeah, he's been on, and so he came over to Dubai actually, and we met through social media. He was in the Media One hotel. He sent out a tweet saying anyone in the digital realm around. My old office used to be in the CNN building in Media City, and I was like, I'm across the road, and literally walked across. Had a chat, had a coffee, and he had a digital agency, transitioned across into the cyber safety world, and said, "Is there a problem here?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know." And a little bit of research really highlighted what a huge problem even back then there was. And I think it's just been amplified over the last 10 years. COVID really then pushed it into overdrive, with everybody having to be on a screen for school, for socializing, for literally life. And now we're trying to almost claw that back. And I think that's why there's a few more issues right now, because children have become addicted. Adults have become addicted. Let's not just say it's the kids. We have a problem with technology as well. A lot of us can't put that phone down, and we're constantly picking it up every 5 minutes. And so it really was to try and share some of that knowledge. And I feel very strongly about that, because I see the damage that can be done when a young person is just left alone on these devices, or they feel like they've been left alone, that mum and dad aren't really that interested or don't get it. They don't want to talk to their peers or their siblings, and they're maybe receiving some really negative content online, or they've done something they knew they shouldn't have done, but they're scared to tell mum and dad because of the repercussions. And all of these scenarios that keep unfolding, and I keep hearing about when I go into schools. And this is also a really important point, is that it wasn't something that was happening in the US and the UK and Australia, which it is. And people say, oh yeah, but it's a problem for out there. It's a problem here as well in the UAE. And then that's why we said, right, well, we really need to try and do something.
It's everywhere. No, definitely. And also it's funny because when you were saying that, it was just making me realize as well, of course, we've got the bullying aspect of being online to think about. And also as well, when you were saying that, because we spend so much time online, I feel like you do lose your social skills, don't you? Because I think you can become, especially young people, if they're using it more than, I don't know, older people, I'm not sure though of the statistics, but it can become such a comfort zone and so familiar that you're just so used to speaking to a screen that when you actually, it's time to speak, face to face, it can be very daunting, and that can actually maybe cause anxiety and things like that. Because even probably during COVID, maybe it was the other way around, but I think when we went from online to being back to face, even I found that quite strange. It's like, oh my God, like real people, it can be quite daunting sometimes if you're used to it on your own.
Yeah, very much so. And this was one of the things that we saw in schools as things started to open up, and we were allowed to go back into schools and deliver our sessions live in front of people as opposed to through Zoom and whatnot. We started talking to the counsellors and the safeguarding leads, and they were saying they were seeing problems with young people struggling to go back into the classroom. They were having anxiety at going back into a situation where there were other people around, and in the early days where you still had to maintain a distance, and in the in the amphitheatre it was one seat space, they were still wearing masks, and there were some young people that would say, I can't do it. Literally having panic attacks and saying, I can't do it. I don't know what to do. This is so strange to me. And you're absolutely right. It's amplified that situation. And even prior to COVID, we were seeing some of this scenarios playing out in the Far East, where people were preferring to have an online relationship than a real life one, just in a social sense, but also in a romantic sense. Is that I don't want to see people. I'm much more comfortable behind this screen or sitting behind my laptop. And it is changing people's perception of what a real relationship is, and this whole idea of online and offline. And then there's a part of me, because I'm older as well, is that I'm thinking, you're going to lose the art of being able to talk to people face to face, which I think is such a valuable skill to have. But then there's also my digital side of saying, but are we actually going to need to do that in the future? And people say, that's a horrible thing to think about, but it also could be the reality.
Yeah, it sounds terrifying when you say that, but like you said, it could be reality. And do you think, I'm not sure if you're aware of the numbers, but I was just curious as well when you were saying that. Do you think, and we're talking about bullying as well, do you think bullying is more common online than it is offline? Do we know?
Well, it's a good question. It's happening more, if you like, in the online space now. So cyberbullying has increased exponentially over the last few years. And outside of that, there's almost a direct line correlation with things like cyberbullying, online misuse, depression, anxiety in young people. And 2009, I think it was, which was when social media became available on a smartphone. The introduction of the first iPhone and being able to access social media on an iPhone, there's a direct correlation with this increase in anxiety, depression, suicidal tendencies, and you can't deny that relationship. And so, yes, is the answer to that question. That there's been an increase in all sorts of online issues, not just cyberbullying, but again, even if just the UAE, it has been happening more and more, which is why we get asked to go into schools. Because they are experiencing these situations where it starts out as cyberbullying. And there's also some research that suggests that a victim of cyberbullying is then more likely to then become a victim of things like grooming and social engineering, coercion, and some of the other negative things that are happening in the online space. So it's a downward spiral, really, and it's something that I do believe is preventable to a certain extent through education and awareness. Primarily in that situation around a young person understanding that they're not alone. And that's a big part of what we're trying to do here, is that communication is so important. And young people are, in some cases, scared to talk to mum and dad. When you take into consideration religious, cultural beliefs, backgrounds, that plays a part in things over here. But also, interestingly enough, that the biggest fear that a young person has, if they've done something they're not supposed to have done online, or they're being cyberbullied and therefore that's suffering, their biggest fear is that mum and dad are going to take their phone away. That's what they're scared of.
Really?
Yeah. The thing that's causing them this pain, that their biggest fear is that, oh, if I tell mum and dad, they're going to punish me, first of all, and that punishment is going to be, right, no more phone, no more iPad, no more tablet, and that's what they're most afraid of. And so it's a strange situation for them to be in, and for us to be in as well.
Well, I guess it kind of makes sense when you think about it, because it's like the biggest thing, the thing that causes them pain is also causing them, giving them connection. Because they might be being bullied on one part of it, but on the other side, maybe that's where they're talking to their friends or playing games, or so it's all in one thing. And I guess that's another sort of, it's like a blessing and a curse then, isn't it? Everything's all in one place, but then
it is, and it's also, unfortunately, though, when a young person is being bullied for something, it's usually because they are different or stand out from the crowd for some reason. And because of that, they then become isolated because they don't have friends, or they don't have people they connect with in their school or their environment. And that then sends them off on a trajectory to go and find people that do connect with them. And, oh, look, on the internet, I can find people that are like me or appear to be like me. And now I belong. And unfortunately, there are also predatory people out there who take advantage of that and say, well, I can identify that there's a young person who is vulnerable, and I know they're vulnerable because of all of the stuff that they're putting out on social media about how they're feeling and what's going on and all of the pictures and so forth. So now I can then target them and establish a relationship with them from a predatory perspective, and they're more likely to go, oh, finally, when they get a message in their DM from somebody saying, I know exactly how you feel, I hate my parents too, they don't understand me, and then suddenly, oh wow, that's exactly how I feel. There's a connection there, and off we go down this route, which unfortunately, can end in the worst cases, can end in tragedy.
No, so Barry. So when you do go into schools, and I'm sure you work mainly in schools. Is it schools you mainly give your workshop?
Yeah, it's predominantly in schools in the UAE, although interestingly over the last couple of years we've also been delivering sessions to corporates, so to the human resource department, or in the bigger multinational businesses that have an area of human resources that's looking after employee well-being. We've been delivering sessions to parents within the organisations there.
Brilliant. And what kind of things do you cover in your workshops then?
So we have age-appropriate content depending on who we're talking to. So we have a focus on safer surfing and making more positive decisions at the younger age of that primary school age group. Then as we get into that primary, secondary transition, we start to talk to them a little bit more about their actions, accountability, and we introduce this idea of what we call their digital tattoo, which is their online reputation or their digital footprint, and that every single thing that you do in the online space is permanent, and it becomes part of a tattoo that goes with you, and it will go with you from this school to the next school to university to employment, and it doesn't matter if you stay in the UAE or you go off to wherever, it's going to go with you. And then as we go into the secondary school and further up there, we really try to focus on how important that digital tattoo is, because it's how they're going to be judged when they apply to university. The university applications department's going to look at their application and go, fantastic grades, they've got brilliant extracurricular activities, but let me just go online and type their name in and see what pops up. And if anything untoward pops up, it's a red flag. And not just from, I need to find out. It's the reality of the situation. So this is what I talk to the students about, saying they're going to be coming out of secondary school, looking at tertiary education in the most competitive time ever. And so there isn't enough spaces at all of these universities for all of these children. And so the applications department is saying, well, I've got 1,000 spaces that I need to fill, and I've got 50,000 applications. So I've got to say no to 49,000 people. I need to find any reason to say no. And if I go online and see a negative comment, or a comment that could be construed as racist or bigotous, or there's an image that's a little bit unflattering of you, or downright inappropriate, then those are reasons for me to put the application in the bin. And the same thing happens in employment. They go through this process of looking and saying, well, I'm not so sure that Barry's suitable for our business when this is what he does at the weekend, and he's happy to have it out there on social media and everything, because my digital tattoo or my online reputation would then impact the company or the organization that I wanted to go and work with, and they can't afford for that to happen.
No, that's really important. And like you said, maybe they're just not aware. They're not realizing it's going to be with them forever. So I think that's a really important point that you teach. And also, so it's about their image, their professional image. But also, I know you do a lot of work with bullying as well, don't you? So what kind of things do you talk about?
So one of the main things that we do with cyberbullying in particular is to try and help young people understand, or to change the stigma attached to bullying, because traditional bullying, offline bullying, if you like, it's difficult to not notice. When I was at school, if I came home from school with a black eye, questions are going to be asked. I say, well, what happened? So, well, so-and-so punched me in the face. Okay, well, there's an issue there. If I keep coming home from school and I keep coming home with a black eye, okay, there's an issue there. The problem with cyberbullying is that sometimes it's happening, but there doesn't appear to be any signs that it's happening. And so, a child could be suffering, and mum and dad just either put it down to them being a grumpy teenager, they're going through whatever, but that they need, mums and dads also need to understand that maybe in isolation we could say that, but if we notice changes in behavior, we notice that they were, a healthy eater and now suddenly they don't want to eat anything. They were a great sleeper, now they don't sleep at all. They were online all the time, now they don't want to be online, or vice versa. All of these issues, that there may be something wrong. And also to try and help parents and young people talk to each other. Because what we've seen over the last few years is there's this massive disconnect, because we're talking different languages, literally. That as a parent myself, if I start my conversations with my sons around, well, when Dad was younger, and we went out when the sun came up, and we wouldn't come out, and they go, oh God, not again. Journey over this wonderful world that they don't get because they were not born. So it's like, right, I turn off. And so what we're trying to do around this is to try and help mums and dads understand that we have to talk a different language to our children, which in some cases means getting a grip on stuff that we have no interest in. There's a lot of parents like, well, I have no interest in Minecraft or Roblox or Fortnite or online gaming in general. But if you have a child, son or daughter, that's big into it, well, there's an opportunity to talk with them. If we can start saying, well, I downloaded Fortnite, I had a go at a battle, I got annihilated straight away, can you help me? And then our child goes, oh, what do you know about it? And there's a connection point there. So we're trying to open connection, we're trying to open communication channels. And the other thing that I alluded to before is we're trying to help young people understand that unfortunately, this scenario of cyberbullying is happening to a lot of people. And still many of them feel alone. And that there's a stigma of shame attached to bullying, that if I'm being bullied, then I don't want anyone to know about this. So I will internalize it, I will figure this out on my own. And I share with parents this idea that, our brains are not physiologically developed enough until around 25, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that actually helps us with these things. It's not developed until 25. So how can a 13-year-old or a 16-year-old or a 20-year-old process this situation and come up with a solution? In many cases they can't, and they need help, but they're not sure who to ask for help. And when they've asked for help previously, maybe from mum and dad, we as mum and dad have given them that, oh, just pull your socks up, it's not that bad, or it's just, ignore it kind of things. Or we make that face that many do, and myself included, sometimes when young people talk to us, of complete and utter bewilderment, because we're not entirely sure what they just said. Because they're talking about a platform we've never heard of, they're talking about a language that we've never heard used, and we're just struggling. And even though we're trying to process it, we have to control our face, because our face gives us away, because they look at us and go, right, Dad doesn't understand, forget it, I'm not talking to him. Or conversely, they've tried to talk to us, and we've done the parent thing, where as soon as they've said it, we've jumped in and said, right, well, what we're going to do is we're going to go and speak to his parents, we're going to speak to the school, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to fix it. And they're like, that's not actually what I wanted. I just needed you to listen, but you didn't. And so as you're not listening, I'm not going to talk to you. And so they then start to internalize. And again, if a young person is receiving, and this is a big difference between bullying and cyberbullying, is that when it was physical bullying way back when, and I came home from school, it stopped because I wasn't at school and they couldn't physically get to me. Now with cyberbullying, it carries on through their phone, through Snapchat, through WhatsApp, through Facebook, through TikTok, through a myriad of other platforms that mum and dad have no clue about. And it doesn't stop. it just never stops. So there's no break, and there's so much pressure. And this is where I say to mums and dads or parents, aunties, uncles, anyone with a young person they care about, if you can think about what it was like to be a tween or a teenager, going through the physiological changes and figuring out who we are and what we were and how we fit into this world. And that was painful enough for us to go through. Now add on top another layer of digital and social pressure to the teenagers of today, and you can see why they've got a problem. It's the hardest time, I would say, to be a teenager or a tweenager, and it's also the hardest time to be a parent of said teen or tween, because we're all trying to figure it out. And Generation Z is the guinea pig generation, if you like, because they are unsure of where they fit and what they do, and so they're pushing the boundaries. And usually mum and dad have set some boundaries, but mum and dad are struggling to set the boundaries because they said, well, where do we set the boundaries? We don't know, because we don't know this world. So we're chasing each other around a little bit.
Yeah.
Nobody has the answer. I don't have the answer, and we're all trying to figure it out. And that's why we're coming up with these problems, because there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution to this, and it doesn't seem to be anyone that has the golden, this is what we do kind of answer.
Well, I guess like what you said, I think is, when you said about having the open conversations and the communication, I think that's the key, isn't it? Because that's what's going to lead to the answers. Talking.
100%. It's community, and it sounds like maybe a cop out, but that really is the only solution that we can see, is that because unless we start as older generation listening to the children and the young people and actively listening to them, not just pretending to listen and then saying what we want to say, actively listen to the situations and scenarios that are playing out in the online space, so that we can then say, oh, okay, I wasn't aware of that. And now knowing that, what do you want to do about it? So it's about holding space for our children. What do you want to do about it? And if they tell us they don't want to do anything about it right now, we have to do a really difficult thing as parents, as aunties, uncles, as caregivers, which is shut up and not do anything. And it's very difficult, because our natural reaction is to jump in and fix this, because there's a child that we care about in pain and we want to fix it for them. But sometimes that's not what they want. And to go back to sort of the title of this session, if we keep doing that as parents, we're not empowering them. We're not allowing them to build the tools and the resilience to overcome some of these things. But we can do that together. It's just instead of jumping in and trying to do it for them, can we work with them? I allow them a seat at the table where what they are saying is being heard by us, rather than we thinking we know best because we're the parent, we're the adult, we're going to do this. And this is where we're getting this disconnect. And I think that we need to realign. And this is, again, a lesson for me personally, is about, I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers. I have age and experience on my side, but I don't have the exposure that my children do to the digital space at their age. Now, mine are a bit younger, but we're already seeing it. My 5-year-old last Christmas desperately wanted an iPad. I was like, that's not happening, my son, at all. But it's already happened, the attraction of this. And there's also a very important part, and where Be the Cyberbully is focusing now, is that technology is not the demon in this. It's how we choose to use it. And so we have to welcome this into our lives, but figure out how to use it from an optimal perspective to get the benefits of it, whilst also protecting ourselves from some of the negatives. And it's a very, very delicate balance, but that's where we've got to aim for in our opinion.
I completely agree with everything you're saying. And it's funny because I give talks to parents as well, and workshops sometimes about empowering online. And what I have noticed in my experience is, and I would probably be the same, a lot of the parents have a lot of anxiety about this. They're worried. They're really, they don't want to make the wrong decision as regards their children being on social media. And, you can feel the anxiety. And of course, that is going to be passed to the children, isn't it? So it's like you said, it's work for everybody, and the communication needs to be both. It's give and take, isn't it? We can learn from tweens and teens, but it's an exchange of information both sides. I think that's
definitely. We call it they teach us, we guide them philosophy. They can teach us technology because they get it and we don't. And then okay, well, now that we know what happens on TikTok or wherever, now we can kind of, okay, I have a better understanding of the road. Now I can maybe offer some guidance. Whereas previously they would be saying something, I think, I have no idea what you just said. So therefore anything that I say now is pretty much pointless, because I don't really get what the problem is, because I don't understand TikTok, or I don't understand why what you said is even a problem. Because in my mind, she said this, he said that. Okay, so what's the problem? Yeah, but it's been amplified a million times, because now it's out there on YouTube and it's on the school's chat and it's this, that, and the other, and people are not grasping the scale, I think, at which these kind of things are happening, and how quickly it can go from being a situation unfolding in a school playground here in the UAE to becoming a viral global TikTok or YouTube video, and it happens so many times, and to the point where now we're seeing these, young people, rather than trying to stop the situation from happening, intervene in the cyberbullying situation, or there's all of these fights going on in bathrooms, is that I'll get my phone out and video it and get it on YouTube, and I'll get hits and subscribers, and hopefully I'll become super famous, and maybe the YouTube will start paying me. And you see, this is what the thought process is now of young people. It's like, well, shouldn't you be going to trial? Wouldn't you want to go and try and stop that from happening? So no, there's in their mind, and this is what I've heard from it, there's money to be made there. Because if I can get my YouTube channel to a certain number of subscribers or a certain number of views, I'll get paid by YouTube.
So it's not even just about having the likes and the subscribers to boost maybe self-esteem. I know it doesn't, but thinking it will. But it's about the financial gain as well. I didn't even think about that, actually.
Yeah, because if you build up an audience, then you become an influencer. How you build up that audience, well, that's what you're then being compensated for by some of these platforms, because, well, whatever you put out there, 1 million, 20 million, 50 million people view it. Well, yeah, that's great exposure for brands. That's great exposure for messaging that you want to get out there. And so there's a huge attraction to that. And this is where a lot of young people, again, they look at this as this is a way I can make money. I can get rich quickly, and I can become an influencer, I can become an online this or that. And part of what we talk about is that, okay, there are some people doing very well out there, but what they often don't talk about is some of the stuff they have to go through to get there. The cyberbullying, the trolling, the hatred, the negativity that they have to go through. So this is when I talk to young people. So look, if you want to be celebrity online and Insta famous, or you want to have a YouTube channel, I don't have an issue with that, because I do understand that there are ways to make that work for you. However, I want you to make that decision with the full picture, so that you can make a balanced decision. Say, oh wow, look what they have, and there's there's always sun shining on Instagram. So, but just be aware that there's other stuff that goes on that they don't talk about. They may be protected because of their team, but you might have to go through it. And are you prepared for that? And of course, the bravado of youth, yes, of course, I'm prepared to do anything to become super wealthy and super famous. But actually, the question comes back and says, okay, but are you? Are you really? Yeah.
And hi, Wayne. Lovely to see you. Good insight, Barry. Thank you very much, Wayne. And Barry, we're running out of time. I could quite easily listen to you for another few hours, because it's so interesting what you're saying. But is there anything you would just like to say before we go? Because of course there's a lot of information that you've said, and it does take time. So what is the biggest, the most important thing you would say now to parents who are possibly worried about their tweens and teens being online?
So I think so I think that the most important thing that we can do is to educate ourselves as parents. And so that means taking on yet another thing in an extremely busy schedule to increase our level of understanding. So I'll be, self-promotion here. Follow, beat the cyberbully at Cyber Safety UAE across social channels, because we do put content out there. Wayne's just popped on there and said, a comment there. You can follow him at Wayne Denner if you're based in the UK or anywhere else, because he's focused on the area and he puts tons of great information out there. We do it through Beat the Cyberbully at Cyber Safety UAE. We have a parents app so that you can subscribe to that, and any time that something happens in the digital space, we do a little video or produce a PDF, or we do an audio interview. And hopefully, Jasmine, we were talking about doing something with yourself just to help parents keep up to date, and it will just ping out on there. I know we've been talking about balance and not being on your phone all the time, but we all know it's a tool that's there. And so leveraging that is that if it's on you, then a little alert pops up, says the new video, Snapchat just changed the rules. This is what it means. Maybe you need to have a chat with your children if they're on it. And this is continued education piece.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Barry. And thank you so much to everybody who's watched. If you have any comments, please message Barry directly or me or in the comments. And maybe, Barry, you can put your links on the post so people can just click to your website. Might be easier. And thank you so much, Barry. It's been a pleasure. I've learned some things today, so I'm really grateful that you came and shared your knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on, Jasmine. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody else. And see you next week.